Cowboy adopted a lost Apache girl, turned out to be a gorgeous Apache widow's daughter. The sun had just begun to rise over the wide desert, painting the sky with soft shades of pink and orange. The air was cool, with a gentle breeze rustling through the dry grass and sagebrush. On the edge of this vast, open land, a cowboy named Jacob rode slowly along the fence line of his ranch. He was a man of few words, known by the townspeople for his strong work ethic and quiet nature. Life on the ranch was simple but hard. Every day required him to check fences, feed the animals, and make sure the land was safe. Yet, despite the solitude, Jacob never felt lonely. The land, the horses, and the animals were his companions, and he had grown used to the quiet rhythm of life. That morning, as he walked along the fence line, Jacob thought about the chores ahead. He needed to repair a broken section of fence near the river and check on a new herd of horses he had acquired a few months ago. As he approached the riverbank, something unusual caught his eye. Near the water, he saw a small figure huddled against a rock. At first, he thought it might be an animal, perhaps a lost foal or a stray dog. But as he drew closer, he realized it was a little girl. She looked no older than 8, with tangled dark hair and clothes that were torn and dusty. Her eyes, wide with fear, met his, and for a moment the world seemed to stand still. Jacob dismounted slowly, not wanting to frighten her. "Hey there," he said gently, keeping his voice calm and soft. "Are you okay?" The girl didn't speak. She just hugged her knees and shook her head slightly, her small body trembling. Jacob could see she was scared, hungry, and exhausted. There was no one else around for miles, and it was clear she had been alone for some time. He felt a pang of concern and a strong urge to help. The desert was beautiful, but it could be unforgiving, especially for a child alone. Jacob knelt down a few feet away, keeping a safe distance to show he meant no harm. "It's okay. I won't hurt you," he said. "Do you want some water?" The girl hesitated, then slowly nodded. Jacob reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a canteen, offering it to her. She took it with trembling hands, drinking carefully, as if afraid the water might disappear. Once she had quenched her thirst, she looked up at him with curious, cautious eyes. Jacob noticed her small frame, the dirt on her skin, and the fear that still lingered in her gaze. She had clearly been through something difficult, and Jacob knew that taking her back to the ranch was the safest option. Gently, he extended his hand. "Come with me," he said softly. "You'll be safe at my place. I'll give you something to eat and a warm bed tonight." The girl hesitated again, glancing toward the open desert as if she were unsure whether she could trust him. Jacob understood. Being alone in the world made a person wary of strangers. But after a few moments, she slowly took his hand. It was small and fragile in his large, calloused one, and he felt a sense of responsibility he had never known before. He led her carefully along the path to his ranch, keeping an eye out for any dangers, though the morning seemed calm and peaceful. As they walked, Jacob tried to make her feel comfortable. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated but eventually whispered Mika. It was a soft, delicate name, barely audible over the morning wind. "Mika," Jacob repeated, smiling slightly. "That's a beautiful name. We'll take good care of you." Mika clung to his hand, still shy but beginning to trust him. Jacob noticed how thin she was, how her clothes were worn and torn, and how the dirt in her hair suggested she had been living outdoors for quite some time. He silently promised himself that he would do everything in his power to keep her safe. When they reached the ranch, the horses whinnied softly, sensing something different in the air. Jacob led Mika to the main house, a modest wooden structure that had been in his family for generations. Inside, the house smelled of fresh bread and hay from the animals. It was simple but clean, with a warmth that only a lived-in home could have. Jacob guided Mika to the kitchen, where he set down a small plate of bread, butter, and fresh milk. She stared at it for a moment, unsure if it was real. Then cautiously she began to eat, her small hands trembling with hunger. Jacob watched quietly, feeling a mixture of relief and concern. She was safe for now, but her past was still a mystery. After Mika had eaten, Jacob took her to a small bedroom he had prepared. It was modest but cozy, with a warm quilt on the bed and a small window that looked out over the ranch. "This will be your room," he said softly. "You can rest here as long as you need." Mika climbed onto the bed and hugged the quilt tightly. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of security. Jacob watched her for a moment, then quietly left the room, giving her space to settle in. He knew she had been through a lot, and he wanted to let her feel safe without overwhelming her. Over the next few days, Jacob tried to learn more about Mika. She spoke very little, only giving him small pieces of her story. She had no parents nearby, no home, and no one to care for her. It became clear that she had been living alone in the desert for some time, relying on her instincts to survive. Jacob realized that she was brave beyond her years, but also vulnerable. He spent time showing her around the ranch, introducing her to the horses, the cows, and even the dogs that roamed freely. Mika was curious and quick to learn, her eyes lighting up with wonder at the simple joys of ranch life. As the days passed, a bond began to form between them. Mika began to trust Jacob more, following him around the ranch and helping with small chores. She learned to feed the chickens, water the plants, and even assist with the horses. Jacob noticed how resilient and intelligent she was, how her spirit seemed unbroken despite everything she had endured. He admired her courage and felt a growing affection for her, not as a companion, but as someone who had become part of his life. Every evening they would sit together outside, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the sky painted in shades of pink, purple, and gold. Mika would tell him small stories, often using gestures and broken sentences, and Jacob would listen, understanding more from her actions than her words. One evening, as they watched the last light fade from the sky, Jacob realized that Mika had become more than just a lost child he had found. She had become a part of his world, a presence that filled the quiet spaces of his life with warmth and hope. He thought about the future and the challenges they would face together. Raising a child was no easy task, especially one with such a mysterious past, but Jacob felt ready. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose beyond the land and animals. He felt a responsibility and a connection that went deeper than anything he had known. Even though he didn't know where Mika had come from or why she had been alone in the desert, Jacob was determined to give her a life filled with safety, love, and care. He knew there would be questions, challenges, and perhaps even dangers ahead, but he was ready to face them. For Mika, the ranch had become a sanctuary, a place where she could begin to heal and grow. For Jacob, she had become a reminder that even in a life of solitude and hard work, unexpected moments could bring new meaning and joy. As the night fell over the ranch, with the stars twinkling above and the gentle sounds of the animals settling in for the night, Jacob felt a quiet satisfaction. He had found her when she needed him most, and now, together, they would face whatever came next. Life on the ranch began to settle into a new rhythm after Mika had arrived. Jacob, the cowboy who had spent most of his life alone, found himself waking each morning to the sound of little feet padding across the wooden floor. Mika had begun to explore her new home with cautious curiosity, her dark eyes wide as she took in every detail of the ranch. She was fascinated by the animals, the wide-open spaces, and the sense of freedom that the land offered. Every morning, after finishing breakfast, she would follow Jacob as he checked the fences and fed the animals. At first, she was shy and hesitant, but slowly, she began to speak more, sharing little stories and asking questions about the ranch life that seemed so foreign to her past. Jacob watched her with a mix of pride and amusement. He had never been a man of many words, but somehow in Mika's presence, he found himself talking more than ever. He explained how to feed the horses, how to water the plants, and how to keep the chickens safe. Mika listened intently, her small hands trying to mimic his movements. When she struggled, he would gently guide her, showing patience and care. It was a new experience for both of them. Jacob had never raised a child before, and Mika had never had a stable home. Together, they were learning, slowly but surely, how to create a life together. One day, while leading Mika to the barn, Jacob noticed how naturally she moved around the animals. She was careful and gentle, yet unafraid. When a young colt stumbled, she instinctively reached out to steady it. Jacob felt a surge of admiration for her courage. He realized that despite her young age, Mika had a spirit that was strong and unbroken. She had survived alone in the desert, and now she was beginning to thrive in a safe environment. It was clear that she was not just a child in need of care. She was someone with a resilience that could inspire those around her. As the weeks passed, Mika began to form bonds with the animals on the ranch. She named the chickens, gave each horse a special nickname, and even started to help with small repairs around the property. Jacob would often find her quietly observing the land, her eyes following the horizon as if she were searching for something he could not see. He understood that she was thinking about her past, though she rarely spoke of it. The desert had been her home, and though she was safe now, it was clear that memories of her time alone lingered. Jacob never pressed her, understanding that trust and comfort would grow in their own time. Jacob also noticed a change in himself. The quiet life he had once cherished now felt fuller. He found joy in teaching Mika, in watching her discover new things, and in the small moments of connection they shared. He would sometimes sit on the porch in the evenings, listening to her laughter as she played with the dogs, and feel a sense of contentment he had never known. The ranch, which had once been a place of routine and hard work, had become a place of warmth, laughter, and life. Jacob realized that Mika had brought more than just a sense of responsibility into his life. She had brought joy and purpose. One afternoon, as they worked near the river, Mika suddenly stopped and pointed to the water. "Fish," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Jacob smiled and showed her how to catch a small fish using a simple line. Mika's eyes lit up as she held the wriggling creature in her small hands, fascinated by its movements. She laughed, a pure and joyful sound that echoed across the water. Jacob watched her with a warm smile, realizing that these moments of simple discovery were teaching her not only about the world but also about trust and safety. She was learning that life could be kind and that there were people who cared for her. As the seasons changed, Jacob and Mika settled into a comfortable routine. In the mornings, they would tend to the animals and chores. In the afternoons, they would explore the ranch, sometimes riding horses or walking along the edges of the property. Mika began to ask more questions about the land, the animals, and even Jacob's life. She was curious about the world beyond the ranch, but also content in the safety it provided. Jacob, in turn, shared stories of his past, not many, but enough to help her understand that life could be hard but also filled with moments of beauty and kindness. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Jacob noticed Mika staring at the stars. "Do you like the stars?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Pretty," she whispered, her eyes wide. "Big sky, lonely." Jacob understood her meaning. She had spent so much time alone, and the vastness of the desert had often felt isolating. But now, sitting by the fire, surrounded by warmth and safety, she was beginning to feel a sense of belonging. Jacob reached over and gently patted her hand. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "You have a home here." "You have me." Mika smiled faintly, a small but meaningful gesture. It was the first real sign that she was beginning to trust him completely. Jacob also began to notice how intelligent and perceptive Mika was. She quickly learned the names of the animals, the layout of the ranch, and even how to help with simple repairs. When a fence broke, She would watch him carefully, absorbing every movement. He was impressed by her attention to detail and her determination to learn. She was growing stronger, both in body and spirit, and Jacob felt a quiet pride in watching her develop. It was clear that she was not only surviving but thriving in her new environment. Despite the growing bond between them, there were still moments when Mika's past seemed to surface. Occasionally, she would pause, staring into the distance with a look of longing or fear. Jacob never asked her to explain, knowing that she would share her story in her own time. Instead, he focused on creating a stable and loving environment, giving her the confidence to feel safe and cared for. Slowly, Mika began to open up, sharing small details of her past in broken sentences and gestures. She spoke of her travels through the desert, the animals she had encountered, and the loneliness she had felt. Jacob listened patiently, offering comfort and reassurance. One day, while exploring a small grove near the edge of the ranch, Mika stumbled upon an old tree with a hollow in its trunk. Curiously, she reached inside and pulled out a small, tattered piece of cloth. Jacob examined it carefully and realized it was part of a dress, possibly from her past. Mika held it tightly, as if it were a precious treasure. Jacob could see the mix of emotions on her face: curiosity, sadness, and a deep sense of connection to something she had lost. He gently told her, "It's okay to keep it. It's a part of your story." Mika nodded, clutching the cloth to her chest, and Jacob felt a quiet understanding that her past, though painful, was beginning to find a place in her present. As the days turned into weeks, Mika's confidence grew. She began to take initiative, helping with chores without being asked and exploring new areas of the ranch. Jacob admired her courage and independence, knowing that she had been shaped by her experiences, but was now learning to embrace a life filled with safety and love. Their bond continued to deepen, built on trust, care, and shared experiences. Mika was no longer just a lost child. She was becoming a part of the ranch, a part of Jacob's life, and a part of the story they were creating together. Evenings were often spent together on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains and listening to the sounds of the ranch settling in for the night. Jacob would sometimes tell her stories of the land, of the animals, and of the quiet joys of life on the ranch. Mika would listen, her eyes wide with fascination, occasionally asking questions or sharing her own observations. These moments of connection were simple but profound, creating a foundation of trust and love that would carry them through the challenges ahead. Jacob also began to reflect on the responsibility he had taken on. Raising a child was not easy, especially one with such a mysterious past, but he felt ready for the challenge. He had always lived a life of independence, but now he understood that caring for someone else, protecting them, and helping them grow brought a deeper sense of fulfillment than he had ever known. Mika had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined, bringing warmth, joy, and purpose to his once quiet world. Through it all, Mika continued to adapt to her new life. She learned to ride horses, help with the animals, and even cook simple meals under Jacob's guidance. Her laughter filled the ranch, bringing life and energy to every corner. Jacob often found himself smiling at her curiosity and determination, realizing that she had become more than just a child he had rescued. She was family. The bond they shared was unspoken but strong, built on trust, care, and the shared experiences of life on the ranch. As winter approached, the ranch took on a new rhythm. The days became shorter, the nights colder, and the work more demanding. Yet, Mika faced each day with courage and determination, helping Jacob prepare for the changing season and learning new skills along the way. Jacob admired her resilience and resourcefulness, knowing that she had survived hardships beyond her years. Together, they faced the challenges of ranch life, supporting each other and growing stronger as a team. By the time the first snow fell, Mika had fully settled into her new life. She had grown more confident, more independent, and more connected to the land and the people around her. Jacob felt a deep sense of pride and satisfaction, knowing that he had provided her with safety, care, and love. He also understood that their journey was just beginning. There were still mysteries about Mika's past, challenges to face, and lessons to learn. But for now, they had each other, and that was enough. Mika had been living on Jacob's ranch for several months now. She had grown stronger, more confident, and more at home with the routines of ranch life. Yet there was always a quiet curiosity in her eyes, a sense that part of her story remained untold. Jacob had noticed the little pauses, the moments when she would stare at the horizon, as if searching for someone or something. He knew that her past was still a mystery, and he respected that she would share it when she was ready. He had learned to be patient, understanding that trust and comfort could not be rushed. One afternoon, while helping Jacob clean out the old barn, Mika's curiosity got the better of her. She wandered into a small, dusty corner she had never explored before. Among cobwebs and old crates, she noticed a wooden chest partially hidden behind a stack of hay. The chest looked old, worn, and forgotten, as if it had been waiting for someone to discover it. Mika approached it cautiously, running her small fingers along the carved edges. There was something about the chest that felt familiar, though she could not explain why. She called Jacob over, her eyes wide with excitement and a hint of fear. Jacob came over, wiping his hands on a rag. "What is it, Mika?" he asked. She pointed at the chest. "Look here," she whispered. Jacob knelt beside her, examining the chest carefully. It was locked, but the lock was old and rusty. With a little effort, he managed to pry it open. Inside, they found a bundle of belongings carefully wrapped in cloth. There were small pieces of clothing, a delicate necklace, and a folded piece of paper. Jacob handed the items to Mika, watching her face closely. She recognized the necklace immediately, clutching it tightly to her chest. It was as if a piece of her past had suddenly returned to her. Mika carefully unfolded the paper. It was a letter, written in neat handwriting, though slightly faded with age. She struggled to read it aloud, but Jacob helped her, guiding her through the words. The letter was from a woman, a widow, explaining that the girl was her daughter and that she had been lost in the desert after a terrible incident. The widow expressed her love for her child and her hope that one day they would be reunited. Mika's small hands trembled as she read, tears forming in her eyes. Jacob placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, offering comfort without pressing for more words. The discovery was overwhelming for both of them. For the first time, Mika spoke in more detail about her past. She told Jacob about the journey through the desert, the hardships she had faced, and the loneliness that had become a constant companion. Her voice was soft, filled with emotion, but her words carried the weight of experience far beyond her years. Jacob listened carefully, never interrupting, letting her express herself. He understood now why she had been so cautious and quiet at first. Her experiences had shaped her, but they had not broken her spirit. She had survived, and now she had found safety and care on his ranch. The revelation of the letter also brought questions. Jacob knew they needed to find the widow, Mika's mother, to understand the full story. Yet, he also knew that the reunion could be complicated. Mika had formed a bond with him, and he wanted to protect her from any sudden changes that might frighten her. Together, they discussed the next steps carefully. Jacob promised Mika that no matter what happened, she would always have a safe place on the ranch. Mika nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. The thought of meeting her mother was both thrilling and daunting. Over the next few days, Jacob and Mika prepared for the journey to find the widow. They gathered supplies, mapped out the path, and made plans to travel carefully. Mika was both nervous and eager. She wanted to see her mother, to understand the life she had lost, but she also worried about leaving the ranch, the animals, and Jacob. Jacob reassured her, telling her that they would face this journey together. He reminded her that no matter what happened, she was strong and capable, and that her past did not define her future. Mika drew strength from his words, feeling a renewed sense of courage. When they finally set out, the journey was challenging. The desert was vast and unforgiving, with rocky paths, sudden winds, and the relentless sun beating down during the day. Mika walked closely beside Jacob, her hand sometimes brushing against his sleeve for reassurance. They camped under the stars at night, sharing stories and small meals, growing closer as they traveled. Mika spoke more freely during these quiet nights, sharing memories of her father, the home she had known, and the longing she had felt for her mother. Jacob listened, providing comfort and encouragement, helping her process emotions she had kept buried for so long. After several days of careful searching, they arrived at a small settlement where they believed the widow might be living. The town was quiet, with adobe houses and narrow streets, and a sense of calm settled over the area. Jacob and Mika asked around, speaking to a few locals who recognized the description of the girl. Each inquiry brought them closer to the truth, and Mika's anticipation grew with every step. She held the letter tightly in her hand, as if it were a guide leading her to her mother. Jacob stayed by her side, offering quiet support, knowing how important this moment would be. Finally, they arrived at a modest home at the edge of the settlement. The widow was there, a striking woman with dark hair and eyes that mirrored Mika's. She was surprised to see the girl, her eyes filling with tears as she recognized her daughter immediately. Mika froze for a moment, overwhelmed by the sight of the woman who had been a mystery in her life. Jacob gently guided her forward, allowing her to take the first steps toward her mother. The reunion was emotional, filled with tears, hugs, and whispered words of love. Mika's mother held her tightly, as if never wanting to let go again, and Mika felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. Jacob watched silently, a mixture of relief and quiet emotion filling his heart. He had helped reunite a lost child with her mother, fulfilling a role he had never imagined he would play in life. Yet, he also felt a pang of bittersweet emotion. Mika had become a part of his world, and their bond was strong. He knew that even though she was with her mother now, the connection they had built would never be forgotten. The widow expressed endless gratitude to Jacob, acknowledging the care and protection he had provided during the months Mika had lived on the ranch. Over the next few days, Mika and her mother spent time getting to know each other. They shared stories of the past, discussed the events that had led to their separation, and began to rebuild their relationship. Jacob visited often, helping with the transition and ensuring that Mika felt safe and comfortable. The widow was grateful for his presence, recognizing the positive influence he had had on her daughter. Mika, too, felt a deep sense of gratitude, knowing that Jacob had been her protector and guide through some of the most difficult times of her life. During this period, Jacob also began to learn more about Mika's family history. He discovered the strength and resilience that ran in her blood, traits inherited from her mother and father. The widow shared stories of their life before tragedy struck, giving Jacob a fuller picture of the girl he had come to care for deeply. Mika listened intently, absorbing the stories and feeling a sense of pride in her heritage. Jacob realized that the girl he had rescued was part of a larger story, one filled with love, loss, and resilience, and he felt honored to have played a role in her journey. Despite the reunion, Jacob and Mika continued to maintain their special bond. Mika had grown to trust him completely, and he had become a constant figure of stability and support in her life. Even as she spent more time with her mother, she would return to the ranch to visit, helping with chores and sharing stories of her experiences. Jacob cherished these visits, knowing that their connection was unbreakable. He understood that family could take many forms, and that the love and trust they had built together was just as important as the ties of blood. As Mika settled into this new chapter of her life, she also began to embrace her identity and heritage. Her mother taught her about Apache traditions, culture, and history, helping Mika feel connected to her roots. Jacob supported her in this journey, encouraging her to explore and celebrate her identity while also honoring the bond they shared. Mika thrived in this environment, growing more confident, independent, and self-assured with each passing day. She had survived loss, hardship, and loneliness, and now she was learning to embrace life fully, with the support of those who loved her. Through it all, Jacob reflected on the journey they had shared. He had found a lost child in the desert, nurtured her, and helped her reconnect with her family. In the process, he had discovered a capacity for love, patience, and care that he had never known. Mika had changed his life in profound ways, teaching him the meaning of trust, resilience, and the importance of family. As he watched her reunite with her mother, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment and quiet pride. He had not only given her a home, but had also helped her reclaim a part of herself that had been lost. The experience also reminded Jacob of the power of compassion and human connection. Life on the ranch had been solitary, but the presence of Mika had transformed it into something richer, more meaningful. The bond they had built would endure, no matter the distance or circumstances. Mika had grown from a frightened, lost girl into a confident, courageous young child, ready to embrace the future with hope and determination. Jacob knew that this journey had shaped them both, leaving a lasting impact on their hearts and lives. After Mika was reunited with her mother, life began to change in ways she had never imagined. The widow, whose name was Iana, was a woman of grace and quiet strength. She had faced the loss of her husband with courage and had struggled to keep her small family together. Now, with Mika back in her life, she found herself filled with joy, gratitude, and a sense of hope that she had not felt in years. Mika, in turn, felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Everything was new: the home she had returned to, the routines, and the presence of her mother. But at the same time, she felt comforted by the love and protection surrounding her. Jacob remained an important part of Mika's life. Even after the reunion, he continued to visit, helping with chores, teaching her about the land, and simply spending time with her. Mika had grown attached to him, not only as a guardian, but as someone who had been there for her during the loneliest times of her life. The bond they shared was unique, built on trust, care, and shared experiences. Iana recognized this bond and welcomed Jacob into their lives. She understood that he had been a protector and guide for her daughter, and she valued his presence as someone who truly cared for Mika. As the days went by, Mika began to adjust to her new life at home. Iana taught her about the ways of their people, the traditions, and the stories of their ancestors. Mika listened attentively, fascinated by the history and the connection to her roots. She learned about the importance of family, community, and culture. Jacob encouraged this learning, supporting Mika as she explored her heritage and identity. He admired how curious and eager she was to understand her past, and he felt proud of the strong, intelligent, and resilient young girl she was becoming. The three of them spent many days together. Mornings were often spent at the ranch, with Mika helping Jacob care for the animals and tending to the land. Afternoons were spent with Iana, learning about their culture, preparing meals, and sharing stories of the past. Mika was beginning to feel a sense of balance, experiencing both the freedom and adventure of ranch life and the warmth and connection of family life. She started to open up more, sharing her thoughts, fears, and dreams with both Jacob and her mother. They listened patiently, offering guidance, support, and love. One afternoon, while exploring the riverbank near the ranch, Mika found a small, smooth stone and held it in her hand. She turned to Jacob and whispered, "For luck, keep safe." Jacob smiled, recognizing the small gesture of trust and affection. He took the stone, placing it in his pocket as a reminder of their journey together. Mika's mother, watching from a distance, felt a deep sense of gratitude for the man who had cared for her daughter when she could not be there. She understood that Jacob had given Micah not only safety, but also confidence, independence, and love. It was a gift that would shape her life forever. As the weeks turned into months, Micah continued to grow. She became more confident, learning new skills, exploring the land, and taking initiative in her daily tasks. Jacob marveled at her determination and courage. She had survived the desert alone, faced uncertainty and fear, and now she was thriving in an environment filled with care and support. Iana also noticed the change in her daughter. Micah was no longer the frightened, withdrawn child who had been lost in the desert. She was strong, joyful, and resilient. The bond between mother and daughter deepened as they spent more time together, learning to trust, love, and support each other. Despite the happiness and growth, there were moments of challenge. Micah sometimes struggled to reconcile her past with her present. Memories of being alone in the desert, of fear and uncertainty, would surface unexpectedly. Jacob and Iana supported her through these moments, offering comfort, reassurance, and understanding. They reminded her that it was okay to feel these emotions and that she was safe now. With their guidance, Micah learned to navigate her feelings, gradually letting go of fear and embracing the life she now had. Jacob also began to see the impact of his care on Micah. She was becoming independent, capable, and confident, but she still valued his guidance and presence. He realized that his role had shifted from protector to mentor and friend. The time they spent together became even more meaningful, filled with laughter, learning, and shared experiences. Micah's bond with her mother grew stronger as well, creating a sense of family and belonging that had been missing for so long. Together, the three of them formed a unique and loving unit, supporting each other through life's challenges. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Micah, Jacob, and Iana sat together on the porch of the widow's home. The sky was painted with shades of pink, orange, and purple, and the air was filled with the gentle sounds of the ranch settling for the night. Micah rested her head on her mother's shoulder, feeling safe and loved. Jacob sat nearby, watching them with quiet satisfaction. He had helped bring this family together, and now he could see the joy and connection that had blossomed. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had led to a place of love, trust, and belonging. In the following weeks, Micah began to share more of her thoughts and dreams. She spoke of wanting to learn more about the ranch, to explore the land, and to help others who might be in need. Jacob encouraged her, guiding her as she took on new responsibilities and faced new challenges. Iana supported her as well, teaching her about resilience, strength, and compassion. Micah was learning to balance the lessons from her past with the opportunities of her present. She was discovering her own abilities, confidence, and sense of purpose, shaped by the love and guidance of those who cared for her. As Micah grew, Jacob and Iana also learned from her. Her curiosity, courage, and resilience reminded them of the strength of the human spirit. They were inspired by her ability to adapt, to trust, and to embrace life despite the hardships she had faced. The experiences they shared together created a bond that was unbreakable, built on mutual respect, love, and care. Micah's journey had not only transformed her life but also the lives of those around her, bringing new meaning, purpose, and joy to everyone involved. One day, while walking along the river with Micah, Jacob noticed how much she had changed. She moved with confidence, her eyes bright with curiosity and wonder. She spoke with ease, asking questions and sharing her observations. Jacob felt a deep sense of pride. He had helped guide her, supported her, and watched her grow into a strong and capable young girl. Micah's bond with her mother was also evident, filled with love, respect, and understanding. Together, they were building a future full of hope, joy, and connection. Over time, Micah began to take on more responsibilities both at the ranch and at home. She helped care for the animals, assisted with chores, and even learned to cook simple meals. Jacob and Ayanna guided her, offering support and encouragement, but allowing her to make decisions and learn from experience. Mika embraced these responsibilities with enthusiasm, proud of her abilities and eager to contribute. She was growing into a confident, independent, and capable young girl, ready to face the world with courage and determination. The relationship between Mika, Jacob, and Ayanna continued to strengthen. They shared meals, stories, and experiences, creating memories that would last a lifetime. Mika's laughter filled the ranch and the home, bringing joy and energy to every corner. Jacob and Ayanna watched her grow with pride, knowing that their care, guidance, and love had helped shape her into the young girl she was becoming. Together, they faced challenges, celebrated successes, and built a foundation of trust, love, and family. As winter turned to spring, Mika's life was filled with adventure, learning, and love. She explored the ranch, learned about her heritage, and deepened her bond with both Jacob and her mother. The journey that had begun with fear, uncertainty, and loss had transformed into a story of hope, growth, and belonging. Mika had found safety, love, and family. Jacob had discovered a new sense of purpose, connection, and joy. Ayanna had been reunited with her daughter and witnessed the strength and resilience she had cultivated. Together, they formed a family bound not only by blood but also by care, trust, and shared experiences. Through it all, Mika continued to grow and thrive. She faced challenges with courage, learned from her experiences, and embraced the love and guidance of those around her. Jacob and Ayanna supported her every step of the way, providing stability, care, and encouragement. The journey had been long, filled with uncertainty, fear, and hardship, but it had led to a place of safety, love, and belonging. Mika's story was a testament to the power of compassion, trust, and resilience, and it would continue to inspire those who heard it for years to come. As time went on, Mika's life began to feel more complete than she had ever imagined. The little girl who had once wandered alone through the desert, frightened and hungry, now had a home filled with love, care, and warmth. Jacob and Ayanna worked together to provide her with stability, guidance, and affection, and Mika blossomed in this environment. Her days were now filled with laughter, learning, and discovery. She explored the ranch with confidence, helped care for the animals, and learned more about her heritage and culture from her mother. Life, which had once been uncertain and lonely, now felt rich and full. Mika's relationship with Jacob had grown even stronger. He had been her protector and guide, the one who had found her in the desert and cared for her when she had no one else. Over the months, their bond had deepened into something beautiful and lasting. Jacob had taught her many skills: how to ride horses, care for animals, manage chores, and navigate the wide-open land. He had also taught her patience, kindness, and the importance of trusting others. Mika looked up to him with admiration, respect, and a quiet love that had grown from shared experiences and deep trust. Ayanna, too, had formed an unbreakable bond with her daughter. She had been reunited with Mika after a long separation and was determined to provide everything the girl had missed. Ayanna taught Mika the traditions of their people, shared stories of their family's past, and encouraged her to embrace her identity. Mika listened eagerly, fascinated by the history and culture her mother described. The love between them was strong, filled with understanding, patience, and joy. The bond that had been broken by tragedy was now being rebuilt with care and devotion, piece by piece. Jacob watched these two women with quiet satisfaction. He felt proud of the family they were becoming and grateful that he had been a part of this journey. There was a deep sense of peace in knowing that Mika was safe, happy, and thriving. At the same time, he felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known before. His life had once been simple and solitary, focused on the land and the animals, but now it was rich with love, purpose, and connection. The ranch was no longer just a place of work. It was a home filled with warmth, laughter, and life. Mika continued to grow into a confident and strong young girl. She was no longer the shy, frightened child who had clung to Jacob in the desert. She was curious, adventurous, and capable, eager to learn about the world and embrace the opportunities before her. She took pride in her responsibilities at the ranch, learned new skills, and explored her environment with a sense of wonder. Her mother and Jacob supported her every step of the way, guiding her, encouraging her, and celebrating her successes. Mika was learning not only about the world around her, but also about the strength and resilience within herself. One morning, Mika woke up early and ran to the barn. She wanted to check on the animals and help Jacob with the morning chores. As she moved through the familiar spaces of the ranch, she felt a sense of pride and confidence. She had come so far from the frightened, lost girl who had wandered through the desert. Now she was capable, independent, and brave. Jacob noticed the change immediately. He smiled quietly to himself, realizing that the little girl he had rescued had grown into someone strong, wise, and full of life. Later that day, Ayana joined them at the barn. She watched Mika carefully, her heart filled with love and pride. "You've grown so much," she said softly. Mika turned to her mother, smiling brightly. "I've learned from both of you," she replied. "You taught me how to be strong and how to care for others." Ayana's eyes filled with tears as she hugged her daughter. She knew that Mika had survived unimaginable hardships, and now she was thriving, surrounded by love and guidance. Jacob stood nearby, feeling the warmth of the moment and the sense of accomplishment that came from being a part of this transformation. As the seasons changed, life continued at the ranch. Mika learned to ride horses with skill and confidence, tended to the animals, and helped with the land. She also spent time learning from her mother, embracing her culture and understanding the stories of her ancestors. She became a bridge between the two worlds, the open, wild ranch and the rich cultural heritage of her people. Jacob and Ayana worked together to ensure that Mika had a balanced life, filled with both adventure and tradition. The three of them grew closer every day, their bond strengthening through shared experiences, love, and mutual respect. Evenings were often spent together on the porch, watching the sunset over the mountains and listening to the sounds of the ranch. Mika would sit between Jacob and Ayana, feeling safe and loved. They would share stories, laugh at small jokes, and talk about the day's adventures. The warmth of the fire, the gentle breeze, and the peaceful surroundings created a sense of calm and belonging. Mika had never felt such security or happiness before. She knew she was loved, valued, and supported. She had found not only a home but also a family. Jacob also noticed the changes in himself. He had always been independent and self-reliant, but caring for Mika and helping her reunite with her mother had taught him the value of connection, compassion, and family. He had discovered a deeper sense of purpose and fulfillment, and he cherished the bond he shared with Mika and Ayana. The ranch had transformed from a solitary place of work into a home filled with love, joy, and life. Jacob realized that family was not just about blood, but about care, support, and shared experiences. Mika, Jacob, and Ayana also faced challenges along the way. Sometimes Mika's past would surface in memories or fears, reminding her of the hardships she had endured. But with Jacob and Ayana's support, she learned to process these emotions and continue moving forward. The love and guidance they provided helped her navigate these difficult moments, teaching her resilience, courage, and trust. Together, they faced challenges, celebrated successes, and built a family bond that could withstand anything. As Mika grew older, she began to understand the significance of her journey. She had been lost, alone, and frightened, yet she had survived. She had found safety, love, and guidance, and she had been reunited with her mother. The lessons she learned on the ranch, from Jacob's care and patience to Ayana's wisdom and cultural teachings, shaped her into a strong, confident, and compassionate young girl. Mika understood that her past had made her resilient, and her present had given her hope, security, and love. Jacob and Ayanna watched Mika with pride and joy. They had seen her transform from a frightened, lost child into a vibrant, capable young girl. Their love and guidance had helped her reclaim her life and embrace her identity. Together, they had created a family built on trust, care, and shared experiences. The journey had not been easy, but it had led to a place of safety, love, and happiness. Mika had found her home, her family, and her future. The ranch itself became a symbol of this transformation. Once a quiet and solitary place, it was now filled with laughter, activity, and life. The animals thrived, the land was cared for, and the home was warm and welcoming. Mika's presence brought energy and joy to every corner, and Jacob and Ayanna felt a sense of fulfillment and purpose they had never known. The ranch had become more than a place to live. It had become a home, a sanctuary, and a symbol of resilience, love, and family. One day, as Mika played near the river with Jacob and Ayanna, she paused and looked out at the horizon. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fear, the loneliness, the survival in the desert, and finally, the love and care she had found. She realized how far she had come and how much she had grown. Turning to Jacob and Ayanna, she smiled brightly. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." Jacob and Ayanna smiled back, knowing that their love and guidance had made a difference. It was a quiet but powerful moment, filled with gratitude, connection, and understanding. As the sun set that evening, casting a warm glow over the ranch, Mika, Jacob, and Ayanna sat together on the porch, enjoying the peace and beauty of the moment. They had faced challenges, overcome hardships, and created a family bond that was strong and enduring. Mika had found her mother, her home, and her sense of self. Jacob had discovered purpose, connection, and joy. Ayanna had been reunited with her daughter and witnessed her growth and resilience. Together, they had created a life filled with love, hope, and belonging. Mika's story was one of courage, resilience, and the power of love. She had survived the harshest conditions, faced uncertainty and fear, and emerged stronger than ever. With Jacob and Ayanna by her side, she had learned the meaning of family, trust, and connection. She had discovered her heritage, embraced her identity, and found a sense of belonging that would guide her for the rest of her life. The bond between them was unbreakable, built on shared experiences, love, and unwavering support. In the end, Mika's journey was not just about finding her mother or surviving the desert. It was about discovering strength, love, and the importance of family. It was about the courage to face the unknown, the resilience to overcome hardship, and the wisdom to embrace life fully. With Jacob and Ayanna by her side, Mika had found a home, a family, and a future filled with hope, joy, and endless possibilities. Together, they had created a story of love, trust, and resilience that would endure forever.